Welcome to Modi Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Trump isn't a deity, he's a dazzler. India's growth has Chinese characteristics. Trump isn't a deity, he's a dazzler. Bloomberg. Former President Donald Trump's success in the Iowa caucus can be attributed to his ability to dazzle and impress voters, according to Tim O'Brien in Bloomberg Opinion. Despite being non-religious, Trump has increasingly turned to religious sentimentality to win over his base, invoking his late mother-in-law during his victory speech and portraying himself as a caretaker appointed by God. Trump's ability to dazzle voters is a cause for concern, as it may damage democracy and distort the electoral process. Vladimir Putin is hoping for Trump's return to the White House, as the two demagogues can make a deal and live happily ever after, according to Andreas Kluth in Bloomberg Opinion. Putin has turned Russian society into a war economy, with increased military spending and arms production. Europe has responded by imposing economic sanctions and supplying weapons to Ukraine. The US is considering legislation that would allow it to seize frozen Russian assets to help pay for Ukraine's reconstruction. The punishment of Russia is benefiting India, which is set to join JP Morgan's benchmark for emerging market debt, potentially attracting billions of dollars in inflows. Elon Musk's recent tweet about wanting a significant voting control stake in Tesla has sparked speculation about his future with the company, according to Matt Levine in Bloomberg Opinion. While some argue that it would be beneficial for Tesla to keep Musk engaged in the company, others find his behavior obnoxious and potentially damaging to the company. Musk's tweet serves as a reminder that Tesla's valuation is largely based on his vision and the capital market's perception of the company. India's growth has Chinese characteristics. Bloomberg. India's economy is starting to exhibit characteristics associated with China, with a heavy reliance on investment and suppressed consumption. While India has historically had a higher share of domestic spending compared to China, private purchases of goods and services are now growing at a sluggish pace of just 4.4%. As a result, Indian households are becoming more dependent on debt, with unsecured personal loans surging 30% per year. The government is focusing on boosting the capital stock, but the question remains whether this top-down effort will trickle down fast enough to absorb surplus labor. India's GDP is currently 1.2 years behind its pre-pandemic path, leaving around 14 to 15 million workers unemployed. The country needs to find a better model to raise living standards for the majority of workers and broaden domestic spending. The article suggests that India could learn from China's township and village enterprise model, which helped raise rural China's share in industrial production. India's resilience will come from creating better quality jobs and higher purchasing power, rather than relying on a small affluent class to drive the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you the latest insights and analysis. Today, we have quite an interesting mix of news to discuss. First up, it seems that former President Donald Trump's ability to dazzle and impress voters played a significant role in his success in the Iowa caucus. Despite being non-religious, Trump has cleverly tapped into religious sentimentality to win over his base. Now, while this may seem like a clever political strategy, it is also a cause for concern. The ability to dazzle voters can potentially damage democracy and distort the electoral process. We must be cautious of politicians who rely too heavily on spectacle and charm. Moving on, it appears that Russian President Vladimir Putin is eagerly hoping for Trump's return to the White House. These two demagogues seem to have a special bond, and Putin sees the potential for a mutually beneficial deal. However, Europe has responded to Russia's aggression by imposing economic sanctions and supporting Ukraine. The US is also considering measures to seize frozen Russian assets to aid in Ukraine's reconstruction. Interestingly, this punishment of Russia has inadvertently benefited India, as it is set to join JP Morgan's benchmark for emerging market debt. This move could attract billions of dollars in inflows for India. Next, let's talk about Elon Musk and his recent tweet about wanting significant voting control in Tesla. This has sparked speculation about his future with the company. Some argue that it would be beneficial for Tesla to keep Musk engaged, given his vision and the market's perception of the company. However, others find his behavior obnoxious and potentially damaging. This situation serves as a reminder that Tesla's valuation is heavily reliant on Musk's influence and the market's perception of him. Lastly, we turn our attention to India's economy, which is showing characteristics associated with China. India's reliance on investment and suppressed consumption is reminiscent of China's economic model. While India has historically had a higher share of domestic spending, private purchases are now growing at a sluggish pace. This has led to increased household debt, with personal loans surging. The government is focusing on boosting the capital stock, but the question remains whether this top-down effort will be enough to absorb surplus labor and raise living standards for the majority of workers. India could potentially learn from China's township and village enterprise model, which helped raise rural China's share in industrial production. In conclusion, we have seen the power of Dazzle in politics, the complexities of international relationships, the influence of key individuals on companies, and the economic challenges faced by India. These stories remind us that the world is an interconnected and ever-changing place. As always, I encourage you, my dear viewers, to share your thoughts and questions. What are your thoughts on these news stories? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.